There's only three things as humans we can train. We can train our craft, we can train our body, and we can train our mind. The best of the best are not leaving the training of the mind up to chance. Confidence is a skill. Being calm is a skill. It would be a mistake to think that if you don't prepare yourself with the training of those skills, it would happen one day.
So you did it. You finally did the book.
I know.
How's it feel?
It's anticlimactic in every sense of the way, meaning that all this work goes into it. And then at the other side of it, it's like being able to share it is the cool part.
Yes, but that feels anticlimactic?
Yeah, meaning that there's no kind of big bang.
Yes.
So the feeling, to your point, is like there's not like a big thing. It's like there was a moment when it was like the first day it was out to see that first week, to see kind of the traction that it had. But
well, books are different than like movies or something, right? Where most people see it when it comes out, right? So like a movie, it has like a several month run in a theater, or opening weekend matters. But books take a long time. Like most of the books that I read are not new. Do you know what I mean? Like you get around to them, and usually they have to they have to be like filtered through people that you like or admire. Like I almost never read books when they come out, right? Like
somebody
certainly not the week they came out, because I have other shit that I'm reading.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Do you know what I mean? Like so even if I buy it when it comes out, it goes in the pile, and then you get around to it later.
Yeah.
So like as an author, you've been working on this thing for like years and years.
Yeah.
And then you're like, what do you think? And people are like, it's on my to-do list. It takes hours. I haven't read it yet.
It is so true, because my wife hasn't read it yet. So I understand. Yeah. I really understand.
I don't think my wife reads any of my books anymore. She's like, you've done like 12. She's like, I can't read all of them. It's too many.
I live with you.
Yeah, sure. First, she's like, yeah, I heard you talking about it for like 4 years as you were working on it. And then also I read an early draft, and then I read this chat. Like it's not like a new thing to me that I'm excited to find out. I think that's healthy. Yeah. It's like in sports, they have to come to every game. Like you've been doing this the entire time. They have to come to every game.
It's a little different, but I mean, there's such electricity at a sporting event, but point taken.
So I love this idea in the book. You open with this idea of what's FOPO? Fear of what other people think.
Fear of people's opinion.
Fear of people's opinions. I love that idea. And actually there's a bunch of Stoic quotes about this exact topic. Would you believe that? So my favorite from Marcus, which I actually remember thinking about when The Obstacle is the Way came out. So thinking about how books come out and then what they do. The Obstacle is the Way came out. It did okay the first week. It didn't like blow the doors off. It wasn't a failure. It did okay. And then it got skunked from the bestseller list. It should have hit it, but it didn't. And it did not hit for 5 additional years. So it took 5 years to hit a bestseller list.
I mean, I never would have known that.
Yeah, it took forever.
It's in just about every locker room I've been in.
Yeah, it was selling very well, but the sort of recognition for the thing was delayed by 5 years.
Oh, that's interesting.
But I remember thinking of this quote when it came out, which is from Marcus Aurelius. He says, we love ourselves more than other people. We're all sort of inherently self-interested at the end of the day, or we have this natural instinct towards self-preservation. He says, we love ourselves more than other people, but we care about other people's opinions more than our own. And he didn't mean that we care about other people's, feelings, we're empathetic. What he's saying is that we work really hard on something. We know that it's good, and we know that it's the best thing that we've ever done. And then we put it out, and then we go, did I do a good job?
Yeah, right.
Am I worth it?
Yeah. Right, yeah.
Did I just waste my time?
That's right.
Yeah. And so you turn around and you hand over the value of the thing to total strangers who are busy, who are biased, who don't even know you exist. And then you wonder why you feel shitty after you put something out.
That's it. And then if you attach your identity to it as well, so now it's not just about like, do you value the product, but do you value me, because you've commingled identity with the performance of whatever matters to you.
Yes.
And that it's a really dangerous proposition to go through life that way.
It's the most dangerous because in the creative fields or the athletic fields or whatever, you're so vulnerable. You're like this, you're putting yourself out there and you're doing it in front of other people. If the crowd gets to decide, like the gladiator games, like thumbs up, thumbs down, you're not going to make it.
That's right. Yeah.
You have to be doing it from some sort of independent place of self-assessment, not do they love me or not?
Yeah, crowdsourcing a sense of self.
Yeah.
Again, right? Very dangerous. And I think the most powerful people, and I don't mean that in an obtuse way, but people that have a real sense of self, is that the external world doesn't dictate their internal experience.
Yes.
So the external world is happening. It could be thumbs up or thumbs down. It could be jeering or booing or whatever it is, celebrations. That is noise to the signal. And the signal is, was I true to my thoughts, words, and actions? Was I true to my first principles? Yeah. Did I bring my best efforts into? So that inside out is really what we're pointing to in the book.
Yes.
And so the title is The First Rule of Mastery, but the subtitle is Stop Worrying About What People Think.
Yes.
That's not the first rule. So I thought that you would pick that up.
Okay, so the fear of what other people think is not the first rule of mastery.
No.
Okay.
So let's say the first rule of health is to stop drinking poison.
Sure.
You'd say,
yeah,
it's pretty good if you're drinking poison. That sounds like a good first rule. Put the poison down.
Yeah.
I think the poison that we're drinking is this outsourcing of sense. The poison that we're drinking is the outsourcing of self. Mm-hmm. Is so am I okay in the eyes of others?
Yeah.
And we're drinking it all day long. Our brains are wired for it. Socially, the need to belong is in the fabric of how we organize ourselves.
Yeah.
And we've gotten lazy.
Yes.
And the laziness is, I don't know if I'm okay. I haven't done the inner work. So what do you think?
Well, it's a good, what the crowd thinks, what the market thinks, what sales are, the awards. These are good heuristics of, did you do a good job? But they're not perfect.
I would say it's a good heuristic to, did I tap into what whatever they is like?
Yeah.
And so there's a utility in that, but it doesn't mean that it's honest to you.
Yes.
Right.
And I just mean it's a crude metric. So people use it instead of doing the work.
That's right.
To figure out what a better metric is, right? Because for in sports, winning and losing is obviously very important, or you don't get to do it anymore. If you lose all the time, that's not great, and they'll probably try to replace you with someone who they think will win more.
NFL stands for not for long.
Yeah, and so that's a reality of it.
It happens fast.
The weird thing is when you find people who are really great at what they do and have won a lot, is they're actually usually measuring themselves day to day on something usually more strict or more individualistic than what does the box score say or what are the announcers. You find that they're operating on a whole other level of standards that tends to correlate to winning and losing more often than not, but it's also independent of those things. So they could be
1,000%. They
could be really pumped with how they did in a game that they lost, and they could feel pretty good about themselves on a game. No, sorry. They could feel bad when they lost, bad when they won, and good when they lost. Right? They could feel, because they're operating something else.
If the tuning fork is honest to their very best.
Yes.
So if the tuning fork is tuned to the approval of others or the outcome, then those two matter more. So the tuning fork, when you're tuned to yourself and and it's actually not that hard. We know when we're lying.
Sure.
All marketers, right?
Yeah.
We know when we're telling the truth. We know when we've conformed just a tiny bit for approval. We know it.
Yeah.
We know when something feels a bit overwhelming and we choose something to numb it.
Yeah.
Social or drugs or whatever. We know. So that it's like ringing the bell to the signal to noise. Mm-hmm. Have the tuning fork be to the signal, not to the noise. And I love that you're pointing out how the strong, the extraordinary performers work, because it's not as clean as we might think. So the true performers might not be the 7 best in the league.
Yeah.
Right? They could be middle of the pack, barely hanging on because they're not 6'8", 265 pounds and jump 42 inches. But they are so pure in their approach.
Yeah.
And they've got the signal to noise ratio right, but we just don't know them because they don't get airtime. Same with, a single parent in the middle of somewhere that, has 2 kids, 3 kids, and no history of college, and they are figuring out the most creative lifestyle that you can imagine with purpose. But we don't know how to herald them and support them and honor them because they're not on TV and they're not on the radio or whatever it might be.
Yeah, we're all sort of graded on this curve that is our own potential, right?
Yes.
And it's hard to take someone whose success is totally a matter of their own individual circumstances and context and hold them up as an example and say we should all be like this person because we don't necessarily relate to that, right?
That's right.
It's easier to go this is the athlete that's won the most games. This is the entrepreneur that's made the most money. That's why I said it's this sort of crude metric. It makes sense, but it leaves so much out and it leaves so many other people feeling like they're failures because they're not that. But actually, again, graded on this curve, you're crushing it because you've done so much more than it's not how long you live necessarily. It's how long, when you were born, the moment in time you were born, the genetics you have, the class that you're in, the country, all these things determine what your life expectancy is. So if your life expectancy was 40 and you lived to be 60, you crushed it, but you might look at someone who's 110 and be like, they did so much better than me. And it's totally different.
And then you add the secondary, probably more important variable there is the quality.
Yes, sure.
Did you live the quote unquote good life?
Yes.
Right. Did you have a fire in your belly and did you really lean in?
Yeah, are you 110 and miserable, or are you 60 and you feel like you left it all on the table? Yeah,
I mean that's that's a real thing for many of us.
Of course,
So and the other thing is with elite athletics and sport is you might want to have some of the ones that their names, right?
Yeah.
You might want to have them over for dinner once.
Sure. Yes, you realize it comes at a cost to be that way.
Yeah. There's an exciting thing that happens with all of that attention, but it tends to be a lot about them.
Yeah, sure.
And
sure.
Maybe the interests are not exactly aligned.
Yeah.
And, and I say that with some jest because certainly narcissism works in the world of elite anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying true narcissistic personality disorder. I'm saying that excessive narcissism. But they don't have it buttoned up the way you might or we might think.
Sure.
They're working too.
Yeah.
They're working to know if they're okay. And it was one of the origins of why write this book is because I was embarrassed as a young kid. I was 16 years old. I saved up a couple summers to get my first truck, Mazda B2000, and it was $3,000 or something. And I'm driving, and I'm brand new at driving. And I remember I was traveling in a direction. There's a lane next to me traveling in the same direction, and there's a car coming up on me that's gonna slowly pass me. And I thought, I'm gonna look cool in this thing.
Yeah.
So I grabbed the steering wheel. I kind of got that cool kid lean,
Sure.
and I'm like, when they look over,
Yeah.
they're gonna see a cool kid.
Yeah.
They didn't look over.
Right.
And so I had this moment what did I just do?
Yeah.
What is all of that
Sure.
that I just pretended? And I didn't know this person, and I was shape-shifting in a way to look cool.
Yeah.
And I was so embarrassed. I knew that was not the good way, the right way to go through life. I knew that, and I was embarrassed by it. I didn't have anyone to talk to about it and then I didn't really change.
Right.
I was still doing it. And then come to find out with many of the world's best that I've been fortunate to learn with and from and work with, they too have a similar mechanism where they say, I don't want to let people down.
Yeah.
Man, I don't want to blow it. I don't want to look stupid. Look, I've got to show up because coach and agent, are counting on me. And they hold the power whether I get to do my life the way I want to do it. So this opinion of other people is a real thing.
When I wrote The Daily Stoic 8 years ago, I had this crazy idea that I would just keep it going. The book was 366 meditations, but I'd write one more every single day and I'd give it away for free as an email. I thought maybe a few people would sign up. Couldn't have even comprehended a future in which 750,000 people would get this email every single day and would for almost a decade. If you want to get the email, if you want to be part of a community that is the largest group of Stoics ever assembled in human history, I'd love for you to join us. You can sign up and get the email totally for free. No spam. You can unsubscribe whenever you want at dailystoic.com/email. Yeah, it's that's one of the things about imposter syndrome, which I've talked about before. But it's like there is this belief that people are paying a lot closer attention to you than they possibly could be. I mean, even like on a football team, like you get this sense like, oh, the coach is out to get me or what. It's like there's 52 players. Like they're not thinking about you at all, really, right? Like most of the time, they're thinking about so many other things. They're thinking about travel arrangements. They're thinking about what people are thinking about. You have this sense that the spotlight is on you, and that is your sort of ego and your natural narcissism. That because it's so important to you, you assume it's important to everyone else, and it's not that there isn't any attention on you and that the stakes aren't high and that you don't have to perform, but it's just not as intense as you sometimes think it is.
And I know you're well aware of the spotlight effect. You know, Professor Gilovich like coined that term by just basically finding that this is a fun experiment. Can I talk about the experiment? Yeah. So he's got about 100 kids sitting in, freshman college usually, right? And so they're sitting in a classroom or auditorium. And he's got a handful of other students that he says, okay, and no one's in on the experiment here. Everyone's part of the experiment, but they're not sure their roles. And so these handful of kids, he gives the epitome of like uncool, and he gives them a shirt, the Barry Manilow, like a big Barry Manilow shirt on it,
which is probably cool now again.
Yeah, right. Now it's come back around, but at the time, you know, you can see the freshman going, "You want me to wear this in front of my friend? Like, you want me to walk in there?"
Yeah.
And like, yeah. Well, and by the way, what percentage of people do you think are going to notice? And the ones that are wearing the shirt are like, oh yeah.
Yeah, right. Like 100%.
Oh man, like I got to walk in front of the class in this shirt. And then they asked the group of 100, how many of you noticed people walking with the ugly shirt?
Yeah.
And it was like 25%.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that range. So we overestimate with a grandiosity about our level of importance. And so he dubbed it like the spotlight effect. So I've got a spotlight on me thinking about what do you think of my hair and my t-shirt and what I'm saying. And you've got a spotlight on you thinking about your hair and your t-shirt. So like we're these spotlights not casting on each other, but like casting on ourselves walking around.
I remember there was another study that I read about, and it was talking about how like in middle school to high school, kids start to pick up this thing. They coined it like the imaginary audience, which is that you start to think everyone's sort of watching and following you. It's just like this sort of developmental, you're becoming aware of all the things that you were not necessarily aware of when you were younger, and you were a kid and you were just free and you didn't care and you couldn't be embarrassed. You sort of pick that up. And that's why like, your pants rip in high school and you think like, my life is over.
Right, yeah.
And because you think people are paying way more attention than they are, which of course they aren't. And the argument was one of the dangerous things about social media is that kids are now picking that up at the same time. And so the imaginary audience, instead of being this developmental phase that you grow out of, just becomes permanently infused with your personality, which is that you really do think you're performing all the time. And I think anyone who has an audience or has done things, it is disorienting and destabilizing. Like it's not normal or good for you to have an actual fan base, right? Because now there are these people that you think about, and that takes you out of what you're supposed to be doing, which is hitting a ball or writing a movie, or what you're supposed to be thinking about the thing, but instead you're thinking about the thing. And part of you is also going, but do they like me? What do they think? And so we know that fame is this sort of toxic thing, and people talk about it all the time. The problem is like now everyone else is getting their own version of it, and so it's heightened. Like you see totally regular people that are like, posing for their family photos, not for the Christmas card, but for social media, and it's sort of taking you out of the moment that you're in, and you're turns you into a performer in your own life.
Yeah, your highlight reel, on public display, and so. The other thing that happens is the imaginary audience is now real.
Yes.
And we've always been public figures.
Yeah.
Like if you think about like you had a family and a couple neighbors and you
lived
had
in a small town.
30 some kids in a classroom, or maybe 15, whatever it might be. And so we were community members. Mm-hmm. We all are. Unless you're like run by wolves or something. So we've always been quote unquote public, but it's the extrapolation of the size of it and the not knowing, not being able to have a tactile feedback loop about, do I fit in the tribe or not?
Yeah.
And that fitting in the tribe is foundational to safety. Like That goes back a couple 100,000 years. Because if you and I were in the tribe, right, and we're going out and hunting or gathering or doing what we're doing, and we're screwing up and we're not performing and we're actually distraction when we come back, the elders are going to say, hey, Ryan, Mike.
Yeah, you don't want to be the weirdo.
You got to go.
Yeah.
You're out.
Yeah.
So listen, we're giving you a warning.
Yeah.
Give you a second warning.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, okay, this is the last warning.
Yeah.
And then we keep the behavior that's not tuned to the tribe.
Yeah.
You two got to go.
Yeah.
Now that's a near-death sentence.
Yeah.
So that's why we are so tuned, ancient brain in modern times, we're so tuned to the just hint of rejection because that was a near-death sentence.
Yeah.
So that's why when people, what's the greatest fear for most people?
Public speaking.
Walking on stage, those 4 little steps, right? They get
Greater
up there,
than death. The Jerry Seinfeld joke is number one fear is public speaking, and the number 2 fear is death. And he says, so most people would rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy.
It's so good, right? Yeah. So, but why is that? Is because our ancient brain, modern times, we have fused who we are with what we do.
Sure.
And then what we do is in the public court of opinion, as opposed, so that's all noise.
Yeah.
That's why and look, there's no sniper in row 14 in most, most public speaking events, but the eyeballs are really dangerous because if they don't like me, then maybe I don't matter.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm going to be kicked out of this tribe and I don't know how I'll fend for myself.
Yes.
That's actually not how modern life works though.
Sure.
Right. Right. So, but it's still in our ancient brain.
Yes.
And it's as you would recognize, David Foster Wallace says, you know, that the old fish and the 2 young fish, you know, like the old fish swims by and says to the 2 young fish, like, how's the water, boys? You know, and the 2 young fish don't say anything for a while and swim away. And then one brave young fish says to the other one, the hell is water?
Right. You're just used to it.
So the water that we swim in is so obvious to the elder.
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to point out is the water we're swimming in is really the poison of needing approval from others.
Yes.
Now, the subtitle is Stop Worrying.
Yes.
It's not titled Stop Caring.
Sure.
We do need to care about some people's opinions. Like your boss, oftentimes, like could be one of the important ones. I don't have my supervisor in there. I'm an entrepreneur, so that makes it's my wife. It's my supervisor.
No, look, if you, like I was saying, if you sell 0 copies of your book, you won't be able to do it again. Permission aside, you did it for someone other than yourself by definition. Otherwise, it would have looked very different. You wouldn't have put a cover on it. You wouldn't have edited it so closely.
I didn't design the cover, by the way, right? Like,
but I just mean it would be your diary. Like
that's exactly right.
Art is by definition for the audience also, right?
So that's interesting. I've never heard that. Just because I haven't thought about that way. So can you deconstruct that a little bit? Yeah.
I mean, look, you're doing it for yourself. You're trying to fulfill your vision, but you're conscious of an audience existing, or you would do it very differently.
I think that's the civil war inside for the committed creative. Is this true and honest, or is this for approval?
Well, I just think people aren't being honest when they go like, I just make it for me. And it's like, really, that's why the sitcom you made is exactly 23 minutes. Like it's 23 minutes because that's the format that it fits in television so they could sell slots for advertisers.
You're saying the meta. But so I think some of the most creative athletes are the ones that have to figure out how to be creative in the constraints of the system.
Yes.
So you're saying even the meta, the system is designed for approval.
Yeah. Yes,
football games are less than 3 hours.
Yeah, I just mean like you're like, oh, I just play for the love of the game. Then you'd be playing alone in a park at 2 a.m. Like you're also in it for winning and for team. It's a whole thing.
And money is part of the economy.
Of course, it's definitely part of it. Like how I would do the books if I was the only audience would be very different than if I would be writing in shorthand to myself. Actually, this is what's so incredible about, I don't know if I have, what's so incredible about Marcus Aurelius' Meditations and why it is an unprecedented book is that it's maybe
By the
only...
way, like what you've done here, like it's ridiculous, dude. Like it's really ridiculous. There's honestly, what you've done here. Hold on, before you get to your point, like I've got to just like, let me go back to let's see, 1993. When did I graduate? 1992.
Okay.
I graduated college in 94. And I minored in philosophy.
Yeah.
And so we go through all the different types, and it's not just one class, but it's a minor. So I'm into it.
Yeah.
And the Stoics, this is 92. And I'm like, man, these guys, like they're onto something. Like that's different now. Like I love this idea. And it was always working in the background of my approach.
Sure.
So as a licensed psychologist, like there's philosophy in there somewhere, right? There's of course best practices, evidence-based, and it's always kind of been in there. And then I come across you and I'm like, holy shit, this is so good. And like you have just caught the attention of literally like the sport world and it's, dude, I just want to say it's rare to put philosophy on front stage, and you've done it, and you've done it in a great way. And I hope that you have monetized it as well in all the ways that celebration can happen. Like I'm so stoked for what you've done and how people are finding in your community a new way to take control of their well-being.
Well, thank you. What I was saying about Marcus, what's incredible about Meditations is that it's one of the only books, certainly one of the only philosophy books, that's not written with an audience in mind. It's his private thoughts. So, that he goes
and
like...
Frank kind of...
Yes, of course. Yeah. Also an incredible book.
Listen, I do not want to spar about authors with you. So.
No. But what I'm saying is that very few books survive to us that were not intended to be books.
Yeah, that's cool.
Right. So like there's little, and you can see in the book, there's obviously things where he's writing to himself. He goes like that customs agent that I met. So, and he doesn't explain or elaborate. So only he would know what that means. And if you were writing for an audience, you would phrase it differently. You'd be like, in the year 162 AD, we were traveling. You would sell the story. He is, and it's not sequential. It's just bulleted. It's basically bulleted number. We don't know how he did it, but it's just a jumble of thoughts because it was his journal to himself. He was practicing the philosophy, which happens to be a writing. So for him, meditation was having a conversation with himself about these ideas, sort of reminding himself of things.
How did that go from private journal to
We
commercial?
don't know. Basically, he dies in towards the end of the 2nd century AD.
Somebody sold him out now.
And probably assumed it would be destroyed, and then we don't hear about it again for like several hundred years, and then it doesn't emerge as like a major philosophical text for many centuries after that, as the Western texts are sort of rediscovered. I mean, we had this thing called the Dark Ages where we forget about everything.
Yeah,
and so. He would probably be mortified that we're talking about it now. But for him, the process of the philosophy was writing to himself about it. And then that survives to us. So there's something very specific and very unique about it that makes it general and relatable. But the point is, I would never write a sentence like that because I am writing for publication. That's the nature of the world we live in. If you were to look at my journal, though, my diary, it's very different. I'm writing that totally to myself. And it's all about things that only I know about, right? And so the definition, when an artist is sitting down to make something, there's a choice you're making at that very beginning with how you present yourself, how you talk, that is inherently admitting that it's for more than just you.
Yeah,
it's got to be for you, of course, but it's fundamentally for you. So I like your point. Don't worry about it, but you still have to care.
Yeah, so you're pointing at the exact center of the internal civil war, the internal crisis, the internal sense of self.
Yeah.
And what I want to just highlight here is that there are micro choices that we're making.
Yeah.
And those micro choices are made in context to the neighborhood, to the culture, to the era, all of that. But it's the context that, there's this other context that I think is really important, is that how clear are you to your virtues, your core values, your first principles. So if you bundle those together, virtues, values, and first principles, and if those are really clear, you've got some bellwethers. And then if you've got a purpose lined up, that you're clear about your life purpose or your monthly purpose or your purpose while on the team or purpose of a role that you inhabit as maybe a father or son or whatever. So those are the two big ones that help guide the micro choices. And then if you can, inside of that context, you can access the thing that you want to express.
Yes.
And if you've got a well-refined craft, like you've got range. And if you're new at it, there's less range.
Well, and I think you care about what the audience thinks, about what the crowd thinks, about what your coaches think, about what the sports writers think, whatever your domain. You have to care about customers in a capitalistic society. But you don't have to go to Marcus's quote about how we love ourselves, but we love other people's opinions more than our own. You just can't care about their opinion more than your own opinion. So if I set out to write a book that's about a certain topic in a certain style, obviously, I think that's going to resonate with an audience, and I want it to resonate with the audience. But if what the audience wants is this totally different thing that doesn't interest me or doesn't excite me, or my editor says, well, what if you did this? I have to measure that or check that against my values and my intentions. And I have to decide what's more important to me. And ultimately, what you think and what you want to do should be the sort of North Star creatively and professionally. Otherwise, you're this sort of finger to the wind person who doesn't stand for anything, and fundamentally whatever you make is insincere and hollow, right? Like, we want a politician to do what they think is right. Of course, we want to be in alignment a lot of the times, but if someone's only doing what the polls are saying at any given moment, we also don't respect and like that person, right? So you care, but not too much.
And then we can sift down. I have a round table of 8.
Yeah. That's like your sort of board of advisors.
Yeah. So those 8 that earned a right at my table, those are the ones that I palpate first.
Sure.
So tuning fork internal against virtues and purpose. And I'm going to get to the purpose in a minute. Then the next external signal is that 8.
Yeah.
And to have a seat at the table, for me, you can have any level of discernment you want of who makes the table. Mine is quite simple, is one, they care.
Yeah.
They've demonstrated that they know my scars, they know my traumas, they know my ambitions, they know my hopes and dreams. Like, they've invested time under tension.
Yeah.
And so I need that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the first. So that way, when I say, hey, Ryan, if you're at the table, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
It's not just an opinion. It's actually thoughtfully, contextually embraced. Like, for you, Mike, I might do something different, but for you.
Yes.
And then the second variable is they understand and they've embodied living in a high stress, public amphitheater where it's like that context is really important as well. So those are the 2 variables to me. It's like, you've done some shit.
Yeah.
And you've got time under tension in this relationship where I know you also care and I care in return. So,
well, and I think that's so important too, right? Because feedback is a central part of life, right? But if you don't know what you're trying to do, if you don't know your purpose, you're at the mercy of potentially incorrect or inappropriate or ill-timed feedback. Right.
And feedback can be very, very dangerous.
Yes. Right.
There's low performance feedback, high performance feedback. There's inaccurate. There's that. Like, you want to have almost create a sanctuary of the people where you get the feedback from.
Yes, because you have to know, well, here's what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to take the parts of that feedback, and then I'm comfortable, confident, ignoring the stuff that's well-intentioned, maybe even right in other circumstances. But for what I'm trying to do, don't make sense.
And here's even one more layer of complication of like those folks. Many of our closest people like who we are in reflection to who they are.
Sure.
You see where I'm going with this? So let's say that you and I are trying to sort something out, and I make $100,000 and you make $100,000, or you make 102 and I make 98. So we're in some range here, and you say, hey, Mike, what do you think? I'm thinking about this thing, and that's going to put you on the map to like 100 million. Yeah. And I say, I don't know, like that doesn't seem quite right.
Yeah.
Like it's not because the idea isn't right. It's because I'm presenting that the idea is not right, but it's really because I don't want to feel a kind of way around you.
Yeah.
So that reflection of I'm comfortable, I like you because we're kind of close in how we live our lives. And
yeah, your friend comes to you with advice saying, hey, I'm thinking about moving across the country to take this other job. It might be great for them, but you're inherently threatened or saddened by the idea that they were getting up and leaving. And then what does it say about you for staying? It's this we're very complicated people.
That's right.
I remember I gave a talk to the Pirates one time, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I was walking around spring training when they were telling me they had this interesting rule, which I have thought a lot about since. They were saying one of the rules in the organization is you can't go up to a guy and give feedback. Like you can't give feedback to an athlete unless you have a relationship with that person.
That's right.
Because they don't want just somebody going around and meddling, not knowing what that person is working on, not knowing what feedback they just got from somebody else 10 minutes ago, not knowing how that person responds to feedback, what's the most conducive way to get feedback. So, information could be correct, but it's lacking the context needed for it to be successful. And so there was this idea of like, you got to give people space and you got to respect each person's sort of individual sanctuary, especially in a kind of a training or a developmental environment. You can't just go around willy-nilly just, sort of firing feedback out because it could do more harm than good.
Oh, it's great. And so I was 9 seasons at the Seattle Seahawks, and we had a lot of winning, 2012 to 2021. We had a lot of winning in the 2 Super Bowls. One we won in dramatic fashion,
yes.
and one, I like where you go first. One we lost in dramatic fashion as well. But there was a lot of winning going on, and we only talked about winning once a year. So we were not an outcome focused, and we had a really favorable. It's rare to get to the Super Bowl. Like there's some clubs in the NFL that have never been, and so we were we put a tall tent pole. Wait, what am I trying to say? We put a tall flag down that we are a relationship-based organization because it's the relationship of knowing the person that you can, in context to who they are, who they're trying to become, that you're able to provide some sort of feedback in that loop. So relationship-based organization first that is developmentally minded.
Yes.
So we're trying to get better, but we're grounded in the relationships. This is not therapy at work.
Yeah.
Right? That's not what this is. This is getting to know somebody so that you can support, then challenge them to be their very best, even when it's hard.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the formula that sits underneath. When I hear you talk about the Pirates, I'm like, that sounds familiar.
So let's talk about being outcome-based or process-based, because I think that's something I've thought a lot about. Like, I feel like as I have done this longer, I care less and less about results. Care is maybe the wrong word. I think less and less about results. Like with my first book, how does it do on the bestseller list? How many copies is it selling? And I'm checking all the time. There used to be this tool called Novel Rank, and you could see where your book ranked on every Amazon in every country in real time. And thankfully it went away because it wasted so much of my time. But I would say today, I wouldn't even think of checking something like that. Like I don't know what the sales are on the books. And I am always surprised
you're
when
like
I find
king.
out.
Like feed them all cake. I know a queen said it, but it's going to be a bestseller.
Well, I think about it less because what I'm thinking about is what's more in my control, which is the work that I'm doing, right? And you have a great graphic in here. Let me see if I did it. I loved it. You have this thing, which is basically the essence of Stoicism.
Right, yeah.
The essence of Stoicism, Epictetus says that our chief task in life is separating things into 2 categories, that which is in our control and that which is not in our control. And ultimately, effort is in our control and outcomes are not in our control. Outcomes are related to things that we control and often a byproduct of it, but there's not a one-to-one relationship, especially as you get further and further out. So you could be maybe to a certain degree, winning is in your control, but people liking or respecting you or recognizing how magnificent your accomplishment was, definitely not, right?
And I don't think winning is anywhere in your control. You can influence it, in great ways, but ultimately you've got a competitor that is trying to do the same thing. So I'm not interested in the conversations about winning and losing, and I'm not. It's deleveraged. I'm now in a deleveraged position if I'm trying to control something that's not in my control.
Yes.
And so to put yourself in the greatest position of leverage, focus on the things. And I would say go one step further than focus, work on mastering the things that are 100% under your control.
Sure.
And like, I'd love to have a conversation with you about something that I think Stoicism is missed.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Let's hear it.
Yeah.
How dare you?
It just got thick in here, didn't it? Is the way that we work with emotions.
Okay.
And so there's an ordering in Stoicism about thoughts, get your thoughts right.
Sure.
Work from that place. And I go, yeah, thoughts are upstream. We know from best in class modern science that it is bidirectional. Thoughts influence emotions, emotions influence thoughts.
Sure.
And then in between, we've got feelings, which is our subjective interpretation of the raw data of emotions. So feelings are like private and they're internal, and emotions are public and observable.
Sure.
So heart pounding is an emotion.
Yeah.
And then how you label it is your feeling. Okay. So I think we need more compassion. I think we need to work from emotion because we've numbed them for so long and we've been afraid of them for so long. And I do think at the time of Stoicism, it made perfect sense not to be run over by emotions.
Sure.
And look, if you're going to be over emotional, you can't do and make the hard decisions. I can't count on you because we've got hard decisions to make.
Sure.
I need to kill 100,000 people.
Or you could be killed at any moment. Your kid could die of some terrible disease at any moment.
And if you panic and you're overrun by emotion, then you can't make the clear decision. Because we do know that emotions cloud judgment.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a brain structure type of thing. Okay. Now, but if you can dance well with emotion and you can dance well with thoughts and you can play there just a little bit more, I think the world is calling for not an uncontrollable emotional human, but a thoughtful, compassionate, dare I say, person that is working to make something better. That's where purpose is so important.
Yeah.
Because purpose tends to be about something that's bigger than you.
Sure.
Right. And that tends to be about the planet or other people or animals or something. Right.
Agreed.
So I would love, so I'm caught in this, and I've been looking forward to talking to you about this because I think you'll have a point of view here that I'm missing.
Well, there's this stereotype of the Stoics being totally emotionless, being robotic, sort of stuffing it all down, suppressing it, or being somehow getting to some monk-like transcendent state where you no longer feel emotions or anything at all, which I think totally misses it. So I did this book a few years ago called Lives of the Stoics, where instead of sort of really like diving into what the Stoics said, I just tried to write these biographies of who they were. Now, the Stoics got married, the Stoics had kids, the Stoics made works of art, the Stoics played sports, the Stoics fought for political causes. There was this whole generation of Stoics called the Stoic opposition, which was basically a series of resistance fighters who gave their lives in many cases against the tyranny of like several bad emperors in a row, including Nero. So, and there's even one Stoic, there's a Stoic named Chrysippus who died of laughter. Like he was just laughing so hard he was old, he probably had a heart attack and died. So I think when we actually look at who they were in practice, it's very different than maybe what comes off in the page. And so my sort of take, and maybe this is a modern interpretation, which I'm also okay with, like they're dead. They can't get mad at me for changing things. But my interpretation is that the Stoics were not about the suppression of the emotion, but about understanding and processing, and then hopefully making fewer decisions on those emotions. So I like your distinction between having the emotion and the feel, like being angry and punching someone because you're angry are different things, right? So to me, Stoicism is the stopping yourself before you throw the punch, as opposed to stopping yourself before you get upset that someone called you a terrible name.
Yeah, and then the thing that I wrestle with, and just like I said early on, like Stoicism is awesome, and I've been attracted to it. And I wouldn't have thought this probably 5 years ago, that wait, we need more compassion.
Agreed.
So and then if you square it with relationship based, okay, so that's where at Finding Mastery, we're using that in our culture to be a relationship based organization as well. And to be in a relationship based organization, I need to know not only your thoughts. Yeah, that's good. I need to know your history.
Sure.
I need to know the way you feel about your future and your history. And it's the feelings that allows for the deeper knowing. And so I just want to ring the bell a little bit here about compassion's a really good thing in a world that is thrashing.
Of course.
And there's a vulnerability to be compassionate. And
So the cardinal Stoic virtues are courage, which I think people associate with the Stoics. Then there's discipline, which people associate with the Stoics. Then there's wisdom, which people associate with the Stoics. But the fourth one, or which I guess would be the third, is the one I'm writing about now, which I think is less discussed, sort of skipped over, is the virtue of justice, which is where I would put things like compassion and empathy and fairness and kindness and caring about the world and trying to have a positive impact.
That's interesting.
So it's like, it's not like it was this minor afterthought. Like a core pillar, like one of the four pillars, is this idea of justice. And to me, one of the ways that I've thought about this is like, okay, Stoicism in what I control says like, hey, try not to go around being offended all the time, try not to be overwhelmed by your emotions, etc. But that doesn't change the fact that other people get offended and other people have emotions. And so I don't see there's anything contradictory about caring about that, right? So Stoicism isn't, it's funny, there was this case a few years ago where this guy was just a real asshole at his job and he gets fired for being an asshole. And he says, he ends up suing, I think this is in the UK, he sues the employer for discriminating against him and his religion, which he said was Stoicism. And his Stoicism said that he didn't have to care about other people, he could dress how he wanted, he didn't have to it was basically like he was saying Stoicism allowed him to be a jerk, which I think is totally missing the point, right? I don't think there's any contradiction about empathy in Stoicism. It's saying, hey, you should probably go around and you yourself should probably not be an open wound that's horribly offended by what other people say all the time. But that doesn't mean that you get to hold other people to that standard and say, yeah, look, I just call it like I see it. Radical candor here. I'm not polite. So for me, I think we're probably more in alignment here than people might think. And one of the things that actually gets me upset, and I find myself pushing back on, and again, to go to our point about not caring what the audience thinks, like I know if I talk about courage, the Stoic audience likes it. If I talk about self-discipline, the audience likes it. If I talk about wisdom and how to learn and get smart, the audience likes it. But if I talk about justice, then people get upset, right? And I can see people unsubscribe. I see them get mad. If I present Stoicism as here's a recipe for being a better, more productive sociopath, that finds a larger audience and is less upsetting than if I go, hey, it's important that you give a shit about other people, and it's important that you give a shit about the planet, and that ethics matter, and morals. Like, so I talk about those things at significant expense to myself because I think they're important. I think it's a really important part of Stoicism. And I think it's why when you look at the lives of the Stoics, you see that they got involved in politics and they participated and they served their country. They were involved. We have this understanding of philosophy as something that withdraws you from the world, which is what the Epicureans did, right? The Epicureans retreat to this garden and they work on sort of perfecting their own development. And Stoicism, I think at its core says that's not right. Somebody has to be involved because if you seed the field, somebody else takes over. And so, long story short, I do think there is a place for emotion, particularly compassion in Stoicism. And I think caring and participating is not just like a part of it, but like a key obligation of the philosophy.
What do you think the extension of Stoicism is?
What does that
mean? Stoicism was built in a particular era.
Sure.
And they didn't have access to cognitive psychology. They didn't neuroscience. They didn't have access to some of the science that we have now. They did a pretty damn good job, on a lot of things. And I just wonder what the next version or the extension of, and you might say, no, they got it right, and I'm doubling down.
I definitely don't say that. Because here's what's interesting about Stoicism. So Stoicism is founded by this guy named Zeno in the 3rd century BC. So basically the death of Alexander the Great, Zeno washes up in Athens and starts his philosophy. Now, Marcus Aurelius is writing Meditations like around 160 AD. So here you have 500 plus years just between two well-known Stoics, I don't say it, I wouldn't say it ends with Marcus Aurelius, but he's sort of the last well-known of the Stoics, right? But so there's 5 centuries there of evolution. It's not exactly the same. And in fact, one of the interesting things that scholars sort of note is that there is this kind of, they call it a softening. I would say it's an improvement, but the sort of harsh, individualistic Stoicism of Zeno, which is rooted from his influences in the Cynics, softens by the time it gets to Marcus Aurelius, because the Stoics take such a prominent role in public life. They serve as diplomats and generals and politicians and then ultimately the culmination of sort of a philosopher king. But they get involved in life, and you can't be involved in life and not see that things are complicated. You can't, the Stoics would say the only thing that matters in life is virtue, right? Well, that's true. But like, if you go around as this sort of self-righteous, holier than thou person, you're going to have trouble operating in a political world that requires compromise and collaboration, for which there are no perfect solutions. So he says that there's this softening of Stoicism when they have to become more realistic and they have to participate in life. So all of which is to say, first off, even in Stoicism, when it was what you might call a living philosophy, there's an immense amount of changes, and each individual Stoic puts their own stamp on it. Now, flash forward 2,000 years later, are we obligated to stick with what Seneca talked about? I don't think so at all.
Yeah, that's the question, right? Like, what is the neo-Stoicism? What is
I don't know if we even need to call it neo-Stoicism, because then I think that stipulates that it was never changing. Like, so one of the things I love about Seneca's writing, Seneca's by no means a perfect person, but Seneca in his writings, the philosopher he quotes the most is Epicurus, who he ostensibly agrees with or disagrees with way more than he agrees with. And he says, I read like a spy in the enemy's camp. And he says, I'll quote a bad author if the line is good.
Oh my God.
And so to me, what he's saying what we can take from that is that take and use anything that works from anyone, as long as it's consistent with the sort of core values of courage and discipline and justice and wisdom. So you think about, like, it's not until effectively Gandhi in the middle of the 19th century that the idea of passive resistance or civil disobedience or like not solving your problems by killing people is invented, right? So like, that's an incredible thing, and I think we skip over that, right? People invented things that have made not just invented technological devices, but we invented things, like ways of thinking about things that were profoundly changing.
That's very cool. Yeah.
And so for the Stoics, the only way to solve a problem was to go to war. 2,000 years later, it's like, oh, hey, actually, you can protest. You can list your grievances. You can resist. There's all these other things you can do. So I think we would be doing the Stoics a disservice if we did not incorporate those things into it. Again, provided that it is consistent with the core virtues, which I think are pretty expansive.
Yeah, I do as well. And I'm reminded of this was go back to early days of college for me one more time, is that it was the pass at like 11 world religions. And so we're studying all 11.
Yeah.
Sikhism to Zoroastrianism to Judaism. And so we're studying all 11. And I had this wonderful idea that I was going to stand up and say, if we combined, this is my humble opinion, if we combine this, there's a commonality here, here, here. And if we cobbled together a couple of these common ideas, like, and so the professor says, thank you. I just want to make sure I'm understanding your point of view here, is that you believe that you've discerned deeper than Buddha, Confucius, Jesus, and Muhammad. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, sure.
Right, in your 6 days of class here. So, it is so easy to opine from a distance.
Of course.
As opposed to develop from within. And this is where I think we come back to that signal to noise ratio, is for us to understand what the signal is.
Yeah.
And if the Stoic approach can help, awesome.
Yeah.
And if it's resting on a bed of virtues that are generative, rather than self-serving.
Yeah.
And so that to me is one of the bedrock of the whole thing.
Yeah, and not all the innovations are these massive breakthroughs in like science or psychology or neuroscience. Although there's many of those that we have to incorporate. But like I'm fond of that idea in recovery groups of the acronym HALT, like hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
Oh, yeah.
That you have to think about if you're any of those things before you make a decision.
Yeah.
So nowhere does Marcus Aurelius or Seneca or Epictetus, as they're talking about being rational and not being driven by your emotion, nowhere do they go like, have you eaten today? But like, that's a huge part of of being better at these things.
That's right.
Right. And so the idea that we're just supposed to stick with what they came up with 2,000 years ago is naive, but also that fits pretty seamlessly into the, if they're saying like, hey, don't trust your first impressions, right? Well, that's not just, hey, what do I think about this? But also, we now understand that what we think about it is formed by what's going on inside of our body.
That's right. That's the embodied cognition piece.
And so I think we have to incorporate all that stuff.
Even by our gut biome.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, right. Which they didn't have access to the science, but they had great insight and intuition about how things were working.
It also makes you way more empathetic of other people if you understand this, right? Like, so you have kids and you go, my kid's not an asshole. They just skipped their nap, right? My kid's not a monster. Their routine was disrupted. And so you get really good at separating between the behavior and the person. Hopefully you can give that gift to yourself, but hopefully, definitely you can learn to give that gift to humanity, which is the person who cut you off in traffic just got a call on headphones that their mother died or whatever, right? You can go, you can realize that things are always happening to people. And if we can be kind and empathetic and separate between the person and the behavior, it allows us to be more empathetic and then also not be so frustrated, right? Not like, ironically, Socrates said that, nobody does wrong on purpose. And then we have this understanding of, okay, why are people doing things that are wrong? And then it helps us manage our emotions, but then it also helps us understand and appreciate what other people are going through.
This is one of the things that my wife and I, we've been married a long time, we're great friends. And I come from an approach that I don't know anyone that's a villain in their own story.
Yes.
Right? And so we're looking for reasons why we are slighted or agitated or tired or fatigued. And so that helps me give a pass to people to look at the behavior in a different way and not assault the person.
Yeah.
And she says, you're making up stories. That's bad behavior.
Sure.
That is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
What the deal is. That's not right. And so like that's one of our tensions. And
sure.
one of her virtues that she is thinks is not a healthy virtue is fairness.
That fairness is not
a healthy virtue to rest on. And I'm like, yeah. And we've had a lot of talk.
What does that mean? So walk me through that.
So fairness, that she feels it's a dangerous duping, that we should be in a world of, that we should
insist that things are fair?
No, to build children's philosophy that let's work out of fairness.
Okay.
As opposed to, and the reason being is because there's wolves in the world.
Yeah, sure.
And there's slippery folks that like are trying to take advantage.
Sure.
I happen to believe the world is dangerous and hostile. I don't think it's set up for my success or your success or happiness for all. Like, it's a pretty toxically dangerous world.
Yeah.
Okay, so put a pin in that. So then we raise these young babes saying, act out of fairness, but you might be working in tandem with a wolf in sheep's clothing, and so, or a selfish person that's trying to get theirs rather than support yours. So it's an interesting philosophical position about the concept of fairness.
Yeah, it is tricky because you have this virtue of justice, and we control whether we behave with justice, but we don't really control whether other people act fairly or rightly. But should we let the fact that other people act that way make us not act that way? I think that's the tricky part.
I think that's where society is holding together loosely, is that many people hold the position of my wife, which is like, well, if that's going to happen, I need to protect myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
If there's a bunch of wolves out there, I can't just kind of walk out there and say, hey guys, let's share the meat.
Let's
share the cockers. Can I get some?
Yeah.
As opposed to, other virtues of maybe kindness, but not fairness, is an interesting split between the two. So I take your point, which is, no, my actions need to be my own, not in only reaction to somebody else's actions. So so
I think that is a tension even in the Stoic text, is that you have this moral compass, you have this standard you hold yourself to, and then you have to deal with the fact that the vast majority of people in the world, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, do not operate the same way. And there's this great line in Meditations where Marcus goes, "Remember, you do not live in Plato's Republic." And he didn't set up the system. He didn't choose to be in the system.
Right.
He has to operate inside the system. And I think there is this idea, for instance, I forget what, maybe it was Kennedy said it. He said, like, parents want their kids to be president, but they don't want them to be politicians. And in fact, we need more politicians. Like political success or operating in a political domain is a skill that requires mastery just like any other skill. And oftentimes what happens is you either have complete monsters who have that skill, or you have great human beings who enter that world without any of the skill, and they think they're living in Plato's Republic where, the just cause always wins, and if I can just give the right speech, everyone will give me a standing ovation and then vote to fund Ukraine or whatever. But that's not fucking how it works. And the system we have is set up to mitigate some of those toxic impulses, but they nevertheless exist, and you have to figure out how to be savvy inside them. And I've always found this, like, I'll recommend Robert Greene's works, and people go, "Oh, it's so awful." I'm like, if you think that, you're the person who needs to read it more than anyone, because you are saying that because you don't like something or you don't want it to be true, that it's not true. And that's not how it is.
There's a reaction to the laws of power.
Yeah.
Is that the one? Yeah. So are you do you have your eye on campaign 2032 or something? Like, are you like?
Definitely not. I have zero interest in participating in politics in that sense. But
do you think of yourself as a philosopher or as a commentary on philosophy?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's, in the world we live in, I feel like there's something a little delusional, grandiose about calling yourself a philosopher. So I prefer to I think it's healthier to see myself as number one, as a person who's trying to use philosophy in my life. And then number two, as a writer who happens to write about philosophical ideas. And then if somebody else wants to put those two things together and call me a philosopher, I'm not going to argue with you, but it's not important. And in fact, maybe dangerous for that to be incorporated into my self-identity.
So I'm glad we bring it up, because we go after in the book a performance-based identity.
Yeah.
And that is one of the great on-ramps to a radical fear of people's opinions, right? And it makes perfect sense to me that in certainly the West, we are obsessed with performance.
Yes.
Like at 8, we're giving grades, so we like performance now. So it makes perfect sense that people would mingle their identity with performance. And so it's a thing called a performance-based identity. And a performance-based identity basically is, I am what I do relative to how well you do it.
Yeah.
So it's not just I am what I do, which a healthier version is I am who I am.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's I am what I do relative to how well I do it next to you.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really, really tricky.
Yeah.
Because now I need to be better than you.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm a friend, or maybe I'm a competitor, or whatever. Competitors can be friends as well. So this idea of having a performance-based identity, the work is to decouple who I am from what I do.
Yes.
And that takes a very long time. I heard it in what you just said.
Well, my friend Austin Kleon, who's amazing, he's done a bunch of great books, but he says the problem is too many people want to be the noun rather than do the verb, right? So like, I like writer versus author even, because like what I do is write things, right? And I do it every day. And the fact that those things are at some point packaged together, called a book, and then flung to the public to sell or not sell, you're getting, each step of that, it's getting further away from what I control. And fundamentally, I think more importantly, getting further away from what I do, right?
right.
And so I think so often, like, do you see yourself as a point guard, or do you see yourself as an all-star, right? Or an NBA star, or a team captain? Like, you start to get towards roles as opposed to like jobs or status.
I think both of those are equally dangerous.
Yes.
Which is underneath is, so I two funny stories. One, well, I'll leave the humor decision up to you.
Okay. Right. Actually, that's not in your control.
Yeah, right. That's right.
I'll be the judge. Yes.
The first one actually is not funny at all. But the second one is, I walked into a fitness gym.
Yeah.
And it was one of those kind of structured classes gyms. And the person behind the desk comes up and goes, "Oh, are you Mike Gervais?" Like, and I go, "Oh, thank you. Yeah." And he says, "Man, I don't want to bug you. I know you're going into doing this thing, and but I'd love to talk to you about, like, at some point." And I said, "Okay, no problem." So I come in a week later. I'm back in there, and he says, "Could you just really quickly, could you tell me how you've become, like I'd love to do what you do at some point." And I said, "Oh, no problem. It's like, undergraduate, a graduate degree in this, PhD in psychology. Then you got to get licensed. And then you really don't know anything. So you need some real kind of time under attention." And I could see kind of this glazed over look. I said, "It's about 16 to 20 years before you're kind of in the space, right?" And of course, I'm pointing to my applied art science of psychology. And he says, "Wait, to be a podcaster?"
See, what I thought, which has happened to me before, is, and this is why audience and fame can be dangerous, right? Is you get used to people recognizing you or coming up to you and talking to you, even if it's not like at some huge level, like the way like a world famous person would be, but you get used to occasionally people recognize you. And I remember I was at the airport a couple months ago, and this person sort of comes up to me, and I could see anyways, they come up to me and they start talking to me out of my headphones, and I thought they were coming up to me as a fan, right? And so you go into like this when you've identified yourself as a person who gets recognized. Right. Yeah. I'm going into that interaction, right? And really, they just wanted me to move, like I was in the way of something. You know what I mean? And so you get. They say fame is a mask that eats at the face. The thing you do, you become conscious of your status or role in the world, and then it changes literally how you interpret reality. If I was a regular person, and I am a regular person, but if I didn't have the experiences that I had, my mind would never have even conceived that this person was recognizing me or that I was important. There's a status differential or whatever. My initial impulse would be, am I in somebody's way? And so like when you identify with something or things become normalized to you, it fundamentally shapes your understanding of reality, and usually 100%. Not in a good way.
100%. That's so good. That's so funny. Oh, cool, man.
But I think that in your case, I would say you passed the test in the sense that you went towards the harder thing that you do, and the training and the work that went into it, as opposed to the easy, because a lot of the problem is, and I think Austin's right, people want to be the noun, not do the verb, and people want to be famous, as opposed to do things for which the byproduct is some level of fame. Like I'm wearing an Iron Maiden shirt, but one of my favorite quotes from the lead singer of Iron Maiden is he said, "Fame is the excrement of creativis." Oh, he's like, it's the sludgy thing that comes out, or it's the thing that comes out the backside. And his point is that if you do stuff that large amounts of people like, or you do things long enough that you accumulate an audience of people who have seen you do what you do, then the byproduct of that is fame. You can be a famous astronaut, you could be a famous chemist, you can be famous for many things, or so you could say, hey, I need to go do something, and I'm going to focus on that process, and hopefully or potentially the byproduct of it is that a large amount of people know who I am, which is not as great as people think it is, but it does happen. Or you could be someone that says, I want a large amount of people to know who I am. And then that's where you get reality TV stars or Donald Trump or whatever, right? Yeah. Like not great outcomes.
I'm live in LA.
Yeah.
And it spits people right out.
Of course.
Like it's just such a heavy place because so many are attracted to the lights.
Yeah.
And if you don't have some roots, like you get spun quickly.
Or if you don't have a craft that you can fall back on, because again, there's so many things that are outside your control. How quick you get traction, how your things do. There's so much between you and those things that you are nice to have. Like the Stoics had this great concept they call there's things that are up to us and there's things that are not up to us. But they say there's kind of this middle category of what they call preferred indifference. Not indifference ENCE, but indifference like ENTS, right? So that they're like, if you work really hard on a book, and it's the best thing you've ever done, and you're so proud of it, and if I asked you, do you want it to sell 1 million copies or 0 copies, right? Well, the Stoics would say it's not fully in your control, so you should be indifferent. But you obviously have a preference, right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
Would you prefer to be born really tall or really short? You have a preference, right? Would you rather be poor or rich? You have a preference, right? Now, the Stoic would say you should be able to work with either, right? And that neither says anything about you as a person, but preference, right? And so as long as that preference doesn't fundamentally change who you are or make you vulnerable to being unhappy if you don't get that thing, it's, I think, okay to have a preference.
Yeah. Preferences are cool.
Yeah. And I think if you see it as a preference, then it's great. But the problem is if you see it as a necessity or you see it as a just reward. Like that was my other thing when I was thinking about fear of what other people think, is Mark Aurelius has this line in Meditations where he says, stop asking for the third thing. So he says, you've done something good and someone has benefited from it. He says, stop asking for the third thing. And he says, the third thing is gratitude, recognition, appreciation, compensation, whatever. Like the different situations demand different, provoke from us a desire for a different third thing. But I like the idea of like, do the thing, hope it, do the thing so it lands. Up to you, it's in your control. And then not needing that third thing. That's a pure place to come from.
It's a little bit like the Zen insight about the 2 arrows, the second arrow. So the first
Tell
arrow,
me that story.
The first arrow that's shot is something that happens. Like it's something outside of you, it happens. Yeah. And maybe you're crossing, your nice little street here and somebody hits you, right? So that's the first arrow.
It's an arrow you get hit with, not an arrow you're shooting.
That's right, yeah. And the second arrow is the one you shoot.
Right.
And it is your critical or judgmental or hostile or whatever interpretation so the second arrow is the one you shoot. The first arrow is the one that happens to you, and the second arrow is the one you shoot. So the second arrow is suffering.
Yes.
The first arrow might be pain.
Yeah.
Right. And then the second arrow is suffering. So be careful of the second arrow is the thought. And if you square those two insights with the Stoics, it's like you're in control how you shoot the second arrow, whether you shoot it or not.
Sure.
And so I think it's a pretty cool way of thinking about it.
Actually, the Stoic sort of explanation of that I knew it, but it was funny. I saw it when I spoke at the Pirates. They had this on the wall. It was, you go into the NFL.
The second arrow, not the second arrow.
No, this Stoic line. Okay. You go into like locker rooms, and sometimes like all cliches come from something at some point, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of these unattributed quotes, actually, there is an attribution at some point. So they had it on the wall as just like a line, a commandment inside their organization. They didn't know who said it, but it actually comes from Epictetus. He says, it's not things that upset us, it's our judgment of things. So of course, the first arrow does hurt, but if you tell yourself, it's a metaphorical arrow, right? So
that's right.
It's the telling yourself you've been screwed over, that you've been singled out, that your life is over. It's the story you tell yourself about that thing. That's what the second arrow is.
That's right. And I think one of the deepest, most rewarding states, continued states that you can get into is a love affair with the unfolding present moment, a love affair with experience. And I learned that from a mentor friend, John Kabat-Zinn, the idea that...
wherever you go, there you are?
Yeah. Like he's such a rich,
of course,
amazing human. But the idea is, do you have a love affair with the present moment, with experience itself? And if you could fall in love with the unfolding, unpredictable, unknown moment,
Yeah.
as opposed to be anxious, protection, try to control stuff. Just be in love
Yeah.
with showing up
Sure.
and experiencing this moment. It's an amazingly powerful way to go through life. You end up being in life
Yeah.
rather than trying to calculate how to achieve or, work from an ambitious standpoint. And that does not mean that you're just going to kind of be a tumbling weed or just kind of go wherever the wind flows, because you've got some bellwethers, you've got your virtues, you've got your purpose. But do you have a love affair, or are you afraid of the unknown present moment? And wait, let me finish this thought. I'm rolling. Is that I think this is why I love. It became apparent about halfway through working with the Seahawks, is that it became so clear that the way they fundamentally organize their life is to go embrace the unknown and to do it publicly. That we see that. They don't know. We don't know how the outcome's going to go, and they bring all of themselves into it. The ones that are, like, I think, noble in the approach. And then one more layer to that is that that's what they do on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, and they don't do it publicly, but they do it in front of their peers.
Yeah.
They get to the messy edge where they could fall into 1,000 pieces, and they do it in front of people that decide whether they get to play on Sunday or not.
Yeah.
So people with real power and control, and your peers that are, by the way, trying to take your job. Some of them. There's a depth chart.
Sure.
Like everyone's trying to get the starting job. So I have such regard for the fundamental decisions they've made and the fundamental commitment to go to the unknown, the messy edge at the unknown. That to me is way more important than celebrating or thinking that they're born different. Celebrating the achievements, when they're on the podium or whatever, and then thinking that they're born different. They practice fundamentally to be their very best in relatively dangerous environments emotionally, because, like, you got to get to the edge where you don't know if you're good or not. And there's people watching saying not good enough.
Yeah.
Publicly.
Well, as you brought that up, what it spurred in me was this idea of, like, okay, do you love football or basketball or surfing or golf or writing or, trading stocks? Do you love that, or do you love winning, right? Do you love being seen as great at those things? And the person who loves all of it, like I love the squeaking of the shoes on the floor, and I love getting in the pool at 5 a.m. If you love the thing, you're going to do it longer and better and be able to ride the ups and downs of it than the person who, it turns out they've only liked it because it's been going their way a long time.
That's right.
And I remember Shaka Smart was talking about this, who we both know. He was at Texas, now he's at Marquette. He was saying that, like, kids will quit and they'll say they just don't feel the same way about the game anymore. And he's like, is that really true? Or was what you thought was your feeling about the game the fact that you were always the best and it always went your way?
6'4" in as a sophomore in high school, and it was easy.
Yes.
And you got lots of attention.
Yes.
This is the poison of external recognition. And so if you deconstruct motivation on 4 variables, you could think about internal and external. And so the external, there's external rewards and external drivers. Okay. And then, so the way we think about it is 2 words, extrinsic and external. Yeah. So, and then you go inside and you go intrinsic, external, or internal. And so the intrinsic is like, do you love the unlock? Yeah. Do you love the way it feels to figure something out? And then internally driven is like, so that's the reward. The internal drive is like, you don't have to wake me up. You don't have to like tap my shoulder to, get ready to go to, like, I'm driven. Yeah. But the rewards are the unlock, the love affair with figuring things out. And if I really love that, I got to keep going to the edge. Yeah. I got to keep getting to the frontier, because that's where it happens most often. Sure. But those are harder to come by, because the world outside of us is giving us lots of externals. Yeah. Hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. Oh my God, you're so amazing. Sure. This is like, are you ready for, next week's game against the crosstown rival? All of that external noise definitely clouds the internal signal.
Yeah, right. But so the tricky part of that is, so if you have that intrinsic unlock that gets you motivated, and you're then internally motivated, that's what allows you to keep doing it, to do it for a long time. But then do you find that can also be hard to turn off?
Oh yeah.
Like how to stop?
Well, yeah, there's a near obsession when you really love the unlocking, because it's such an electric embodied experience.
Yeah.
When those ahas happen, actually, we can see the signature. It's gamma brainwaves take place, which is, similar to a flow state experience, but it's the insight.
Yeah.
And I think the philosophers were like, they would spend time discerning, thinking deep, going deeper to try to get to the essence of something. I got it. So that's a gamma brainwave experience. That's an aha moment. We call it insight. And we call it in the performance world an unlock.
Yeah.
Insight, unlock, aha. That stuff is so embodied and rich that there's an addiction to that. I didn't care about working with pro athletes. I only wanted to work with people that were as obsessed as I was at trying to figure out how to get better.
I was just thinking there's basically been like one boxer ever who retired like at the right time. You know what I mean? Like, so you get this, it's on the one hand, being extrinsically and externally motivated, it's great as long as everything goes your way, which is unlikely, but it works. It can work. But so it's better to be that sort of intrinsically motivated thing, and it's better than being at the mercy of everything going your way.
I think you need both high. I think it's, before you go to the boxer, I don't think that this Pollyannish approach, is that the right word? Pollyannish? Pollyannish idea that intrinsic needs to be the number one. As long as it's high, you can have equally high external, drivers and rewards. Like, that's cool. Like, if you are the best in the world and people like the thing that you're doing and they want to give you money, it's okay.
I remember when my books first started to come out in sports, you called me and you gave me a bunch of advice, and you were like, one thing, you were like, don't ever talk to a sports team for free. And I was like, why? And I was like, you were like, they're huge, multi-million-dollar, sometimes billion-dollar organizations, and they all pretend like they don't have money, but they do. And you should, if you provide value, you should be paid for it. And I like, because there's some part of you, if you are intrinsically or internally motivated, you're like, I'm just happy to be here, just happy to do what I do.
There's an unlock here.
Yeah,
we're going to figure.
And that's all great, but you should also, you're not doing yourself, one of the things I've learned, you're not doing yourself any favors by not getting paid the most amount you can get paid.
That's right.
For that thing.
And I want to go back to boxers, right?
Yeah.
And they're not if you don't value it in that way, they're not going to really value it. So it's
always anytime I've done less than my fee or not for it, I always regret it in that it just turns out to be a disaster. Like,
that's right.
It takes on, it's just, there's something clean about, I show up, you pay me this. Like, businesses, we develop these practices for a reason.
That's right. Yeah. It's nice and clean that way. Yeah. And so, man, that's cool.
I think about it all the time.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, I think that for all of us, like the way I make decisions, there's three vectors.
Yeah.
One is there an economic reward?
Yeah.
Does it move the needle towards goodness?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's something compelling or purposeful that is taking place, and is it going to be fun?
Yeah. Is it cool?
So I need two of those three, and I just need to know if I get all three, it's awesome.
Yeah.
But I definitely need two of those three.
Yeah.
I don't like just showing up and taking money.
Of course.
If it's show up, take money, and it's fun.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. And then, but I definitely need the third one, in there as well. So if you can get all three of those together, I'm like, this is a home run. Are you kidding me?
But I guess what I'm saying is intrinsic, extrinsic. The point is, some people have the problem; they don't have enough motivation. Then other people, you just do it longer than you should. You can't stop doing it because
you're back to the boxer here.
You're back to the identifying with being a thing, getting to do a thing, as opposed to what's best for you, what's most sustainable, et cetera.
Well, so the professional sport world is really electric. And if you have identified yourself with being a performer, whatever the performance is, one, it's really fun. It's electric. Your identity is merged with it.
Yeah.
It's a near-death sentence.
Yeah.
This is why 87% are divorced, broke, a mess within 2 years of retiring.
Yeah.
It's because their identity is so merged with what they do.
Sure.
So most have to get kicked out. I think you'd have to kick me out too.
Yeah.
right? And
Sure.
because it's fun, it's amazing.
But you left.
I did leave.
So you didn't have to kick you out.
No, I left because there was a pandemic and I had to move my family up to Seattle to be in the bubble.
Right.
And so logistically it
Sure.
stopped. But it was a perfect
So
time
that was
to part
great
ways.
though. I mean, the pandemic was a forcing function for me in a lot of ways. You get so comfortable doing what you've done and just going along with how things go. Sometimes you need something to come in
Yeah.
and force you to get back to your first principles or reevaluate some assumptions. And you go, oh, wait, this isn't the way it should go, or I wanted it to go all the time. And what do I want my life to look like?
For me, it was like perfect timing. It wasn't easy, but Coach Carroll and I, the head coach of the Seahawks, we had built a business taking best practices in sport, how to train your mind to be your very best. And we crosswalk those into enterprise companies and large corporations. So when the pandemic hit, it was like, I think it's time to go run that thing full time.
Yeah,
What do
sure.
you think, Pete? And coach, and he says, yeah, like this
Sure.
is eloquent. And so that's where I've been the last handful of years doing that.
But it's hard to stop. And I think your point is, a lot of times you have to, something either has to force you out or you have to literally be forced out.
A pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And imagine like if I talk about it with my wife all the time, again, best friend, great partner. And she's like, we go up. Like if that's what you want to do, we'll kind of uproot. I'm so glad I didn't.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's when you can have the internal practice to get down to the truth of things so that you can discern and you can feel your way in there. See what I did?
Yeah.
Not just think, but you can think and feel your way in there. It's just, I think it gets exponentially easier.
All right. So I want to talk about finding mastery for a second, then I want to come back to Beethoven, who you talk a lot about in the book. But when you say finding mastery, do you think it's an external thing or is it an internal thing?
So there's mastery of self and mastery of craft.
Yeah.
I'm far more interested in the internal experience. The commitment to the path to get to the truth of what you value, right? So whatever you're attending to. And so the path of mastery is really what it's about. And so it's like the approach towards trying to better understand it is what finding means in that sense. And so mastery is mastery of craft and mastery of self. I've sat and asked the question to so many people, you included, like, what do you think about mastery? And most people say, there's like two that didn't say this. I don't know. Like I love it. Yeah. I don't know if I'm on the path. I think I am, like this idea that it's an unfolding as opposed to, there was two people like, yeah, I have mastered my craft. Like most people are like, it's this thing.
Yes.
It's a path. It's a process. It's a becoming. It's an understanding. It's an unlocking. And I'm committed to it.
Yeah.
And I'm more interested in mastery of self through craft.
Sure.
Mastery of craft alone feels hollow.
Well, because there's a lot of people who are very good at what they do, but also monsters.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's well said. Yeah. So mastery of self through craft. So the craft is the tool or the utility, as opposed to the reversing it. Mastery of craft and mastery of self.
Yeah. Don't you think there's kind of a point? So you get really good at something. Maybe you get really successful at that thing. It usually happens, but not always. So you get really good at something, and then you kind of have this crossroads moment where you go, is this going to be my whole thing? Is it going to be everything about me? And I'm going to sacrifice everything to maintain it or keep going with it? Or now I have this kind of second challenge, which is how do I integrate this mastery and this success into a seemingly normal, healthy, well-adjusted life, relationships, people, happiness?
That's right. Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head. That's why it's self through craft.
Yeah.
So the craft can actually change.
Yeah.
So, you think about Anders Ericsson's work on number of hours. It's not 10,000. It's more like 16 to 20,000.
Yeah.
And which is fun to be that
they just move the goalposts on you.
Yeah,
you think you're getting it.
Right now.
Oops. You got to do it twice now.
So this idea that you put in some real work towards something and you have the sense of being artistic with the expression of that craft, you don't need to do another 40 years or 20 years, like happy to pivot. That's cool. And there can be, I was sitting with he was the CEO of PayPal, he's now the CEO of Nike. And John says, he was right in the middle of what he was going to do next. And he was an uber successful CEO.
Yeah.
And he says, I feel like I kind of have golden handcuffs on, where the world is expecting me to go back and do that thing because I'm so good at it. And I could do it really well wherever I go next. But I might want to just take pictures. I might want to move into photography. I don't know, which is, it's not using any of the tactical, technical skills of CEO-ship. But if he could rest on the skills he's worked that are agnostic to the craft, but consistent with self, then you can apply those somewhere else. And of course, we get to crosswalk some of the skills, like athletes they know how to be coached, they know how to work hard, they know how to be on time, they know how to be good teammates. You could crosswalk those into lots of organizational or other places as well.
I just mean like, okay, so obviously there's a very few small percentage of people who have ever played basketball, soccer, football, whatever, that they get to do at the professional level. But then you're saying that 87% of those people, like that, the 0.001%, but 87% of them end up divorced, broke, unhappy, all that stuff,
within
right?
2 years of retirement.
So I'm saying you kind of face this second challenge.
That's right.
Of like going, I'm going to be great at this thing and not let it destroy me, or I'm going to be great at this and I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be happily married.
It's a dangerous proposition. It's very hard to navigate. I had a gentleman who was about 4 months retired, and he came home from not being recognized at the supermarket. Okay. So normally when, he goes to a local supermarket and everyone's like, and so he's like, I came home and it was so jarring to me that I turned and said to my wife, I don't know how you're going to give me the love of 100,000 screaming fans. And he said to me, I knew my life was in shambles.
Yeah.
Like relationship was over. It probably never really was.
Yeah.
Because it was more about me,
Something
about my
else
attention.
was subsidizing it.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's how slippery this thing at some point flashes in their face like, oh God, I don't know who I am. And they don't know who I am anymore. Who am I?
I went through that this year. Like the book I was working on was basically done in January, and instead of going into production, I pushed it a year just to have some more space to do more family stuff, just to kind of rest a little bit. And when I pushed it, I was thinking, I'm tired. I don't want to, because I'm doing this 4-book series. I was like, I don't think I'm ready to just finish this and start the next one.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about it like, hey, this is going to be really restful and regenerative, and it's going to be easier to take time off than to just start, training for the next season, so to speak. And I would say that this year has actually been much harder. It would have been much easier to just stay at your fighting weight and
run the play.
Yeah, run, and then to stop and try to exist more as a functioning person in a world and a relationship and family. Like, because like it didn't just, hey, I was working 8 hours a day on this book and now I'm not. I was like, it was, well, if you're not doing that, you need to pick the kids up from school. Just way more stuff in life, which I have no problem doing. I've loved doing, but it challenges you. It's easier to be like a finely tuned machine that sloughs off all the responsibilities of being a functioning, happy person. And also you're just so busy, you don't have to think about, am I happy? Is this how it should go? How do I want things to be? Why was work such a large part of my life? All that stuff.
Yeah.
And so weirdly, the year is harder than doing it the hard way.
Probably an outsized impact for the health of your life later.
Yes.
Outsized, like a real one. And yes, harder.
Yeah.
Because how to run the play of grinding to publish and to get out, and that. Mm-hmm. So that's cool. That's a cool moment for you to reflect on too.
Well, and then now about in January, I have to start the book that I paused for a year. And so
now you gotta get back into shape.
Well, can I get back in shape but also not just swing from one pole to the other, right? Like, can I now get in shape and do the thing? And I'm not out of shape because I just spent more time kind of slowly working on the other book. It's just different. It's different shape, right? But like, can I do a healthier version of a season, in the way that, the first 5 seasons of someone's career are going to be very unbalanced and totally weighted in one direction. And you would hope a veteran athlete that has a family and commitments and other responsibilities is just more balanced. And you learn stuff about yourself and you learn stuff about the game, and hopefully you get more efficient at it also.
Yeah, you can see, you have different frames of reference.
Yes.
You can spot things a little sooner. You're working upstream rather than the rapids. And, I also think that what you're pointing to is under-celebrated, which is the power of a partner. And so having a great partner is really important. And I did not, it took me too long to recognize that. Early in my career, I was really trying to understand the golden thread of like, what are the commonalities amongst the greats?
Sure.
And I found some kind of interesting, red threads in there, golden threads, but I totally missed looking at my own life and many of them. It's like they've got great structure and partnerships, and they've got people in their corner that believe in them and bet on them. Whether they are in return honoring as well is a different story.
Yes.
But there's a support mechanism that allows their head to hit the pillow in a good way, a supportive way.
Yeah, I think one of the things you find, like, people are concerned that being married, having a spouse, whatever, is going to take away or tie them down. And I sort of go, it does. It ties you down to reality. Like, you're held down on earth as opposed to floating off into the space of celebrity or greatness or what. It's keeping you balanced and healthy in a really important way.
I don't know if I could have gone to the agitated edges that I did in my early career if I would have had 2 kids.
Sure.
We started late with kids. So I have great respect for people that have figured out how to do that.
Yeah.
And I see it in coaching all the time, is they're at the facility 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
And they're coaching these, let's call it 22-year-olds, but they don't know they're 17-year-olds at home.
Yeah.
And they're 14 and, they're 21-year-old. They don't know them.
Yeah.
Because they're spending 14 hours a day with, So I don't know how I would have done it. And I think I would have, unfortunately, sacrificed that relationship for my own agitated edge pursuing.
Yeah, usually you learn by trial and error, and it can't survive the trial.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that I didn't have that forcing function, because I think I would have taken the selfish path.
Yeah.
And that would have stung me, because it's kind of how I was raised.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a great relationship with my folks.
Yeah.
And I love them, and but their stuff was more important than my stuff. And their stuff was alcohol and, and like codependency.
Yeah.
And again, I love my parents, but I think I would have made that same mistake.
Yeah.
Mine wouldn't have been alcohol and drugs and codependency and a narrative outside of the truth. It would have been, oh, dad's grinding, dad's doing his thing, and I just would have missed, kind of changing the generational parenting model.
I remember when I visited you at the Seahawks, I asked Coach Carroll about this, because he's been married a really long time. And I was like, you guys work these insane hours and you try, and I was like, how do you do it? And he gave me a really good piece of advice that I think about as a parent and as a spouse. He says, you have to find the moments between the moments. And so, a normal person, it's like, hey, you clock in, you clock out, and then you're home. And if you have a more, what's the word? Consuming career, you have a calling where there isn't that sort of delineation. You have to figure out a way to integrate family and life into the work.
That's right. And
that's one of the things that it's always interested me about sort of sports facilities, whether college or professional, is just like the families are around, like they're in. So yeah, you're not coming home for dinner, but they came after school and they did their homework in your office or
That's
whatever.
Right.
Like you have to find a way to integrate it. And I do think in the business world, there is too much, especially for men, too much of a like, I have a professional life and then I have this secret personal life over here. And only when this one is over do I go here. And by the way, I actually bring a lot of that with me because I'm just on my phone while I'm at home.
Right. Yeah.
So if you're gonna be someone who's works a lot and has gone a lot, you have to figure out a way to bring them into what you do and integrate it that way. And I do think it's important that you also model that behavior. Like if the coach or the CEO is like, when do they see their family? If people are saying that, then they think they don't have an excuse to see or bring their family.
That's right.
And you have to model what that.
Coach Carroll did a great job of like once a week, family coming in, and hanging out and like at the facility, and did a great job with that. And so that was supported and valued. And it was not like 14 hours, you have to stay here until I leave.
Yeah.
Hey, no, go to your kid's game.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not done, come back now.
Yeah. Right.
And then for most people that have this radical profession, they're seeing their kids. And I recognized it in myself early days, like, I don't know, 15 minutes in the morning, and then like 20 minutes at night.
Yeah.
So I've got less than an hour relationship per day with my son.
Yeah.
That's not going to get it done now.
No.
Like that no. So
you got to figure out how to reorganize your life and your day around what's like. I heard this great line. They're like, your kids are not a distraction from your work. Your kids are your work. And so if you think about it that way, or you have these two jobs, you have your professional job and you have to go, how am I organizing this so one is not being neglected at the expense of the other?
I'll bring my wife up one more time. She says to me, this was not that long ago. She says, Mike, you have a really important job. And I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like, finally, I'm being seen. She says.
Also, I don't give a shit about what you do for a living.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, and she says, it's taking care of me and your son and this family. And like, I have an important job.
Yeah.
I'm here to take care of you and our son.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really important job. And if you are traveling the world and not tuning right here, your job is not working, and it has nothing to do with the profession that I'm in.
Yeah.
And so it was such a grounding moment. I was like, thank you.
Well, in one of Seneca's letters, he talks about the problem. He's like, people are really busy. They pursue their career, money, romance, all this stuff. And then he says, and then philosophy gets like the leftovers. And he says it should be the other way around. You're sort of, if we can take philosophy to mean self-development, self-improvement,
right.
Being who you're meant to be as a person. He's like, that should get the main thing. And then the other stuff should get the leftovers. And there can be considerable leftovers, but we have the ratio precisely wrong.
So in elite sport, this is another insight behind the velvet rope. There's only three things as humans we can train. We can train our craft, we can train our body, our physical carriage, and we can train our mind.
Yeah.
The best of the best are not leaving the training of the mind up to chance. So training of the mind is not being intellectually stimulated. Training of the mind is like the tools to be focused, the tools that you practice to be confident. Confidence is a skill. Being calm is a skill. And it would be a mistake to think that if you don't prepare yourself with the training of those skills, that you would just magically happen.
Yeah.
It would happen one day. So the greats do point to a uncommon, unreasonable, high standard of training craft, training body, and training mind. And so that's what I think many of us didn't get in grade school, high school, but athletes do get that, not just athletes, but in formalized, sophisticated structures, they've got coaches there, like a 1-to-3 ratio, and showing them how to train their mind. And the best coaches in modern times are bringing in strength coaches, sports scientists, nutritionists to support the body and brain, and now sports psychologists.
Yeah.
So they're not trying to do it all in a colloquial way. They're being very sophisticated, whereas we're not getting that in big business. We're not getting that in our professional lives. Like inside the rhythm of business of sport, in the hours that you're in the clubhouse, that's where mental training happens.
Yeah.
And it's actual training.
Yeah.
It's not like, I think they're going to the sports psych, after, I think they're doing imagery later. I don't know. That's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
What's happening now is inside the rhythm of business. And it's not the psychologist at the end of the hallway. It's in the agendas of meetings.
Yeah.
That's how we're getting into it. And I think that's what I want to ring another bell for in business is that, hey, leaders, people are leaving.
Yeah.
That's HR. Global HRs will say that. Why are they leaving? They're tired of having the best of them extracted for your bonus
Yeah.
for Wall Street's gain.
Sure.
They don't know their kids. They don't know, and they're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
So the movement is to go from extracting to unlocking.
Sure.
So how does the culture and the structure of leadership enhance the unlocking for individuals to have a life that has meaning and purpose, and they've got the psychological skills to be their very best, even in high stress moments. There is a human energy crisis that's taking place. People are tired and fatigued and overwhelmed, and that is the what'd you call it? The excrement from the extraction model.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And right. And it's like, look, if your people are getting divorced, if their relationships are taxed, if their health is burning out, they're not going to do a good job.
No.
Just like you're not going to do a good job.
I don't. When I'm anxious, I'm a bit of a wreck. You know that. And so, listen, it's not lost on me why I was attracted to this discipline. Sure. Like I needed to figure out the skills and tools, because I can use my mind just fine. But if I don't know how to be present and focused and calm and confident and optimistic, I can't have a love affair with the unfolding moment.
Well, I want to talk about Beethoven because I talked about him in Discipline is Destiny. We both sort of locked in on a similar moment, which is you basically have the most talented, most successful person in the world at what they do. And then the unimaginable thing happens, which is he loses what you would think would be the most fundamental part of doing that thing, or the most important asset to doing that thing. And I think, you hear about Beethoven as a kid and you go, oh, Beethoven's this great musician. And then his hearing went away and he just kept doing it. Isn't that so impressive? And it's weird how we kind of skip over just how devastating and terrible that must have been for him as a person.
Even more insidious is his dad manipulated his sense of self by telling the world that he was younger than he actually was. And dad was a radical alcoholic, raging alcoholic as well. So you can imagine just how unsettled young Beethoven was, is that he needed to have everyone believe he was younger, so he'd be a prodigy, and how unstable not only that was, but having an alcoholic father.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a mess growing up. And then he's heralded as the best with an unsettled sense of self.
Yeah.
It literally was the emblem of a performance-based identity.
Sure.
And then how dare somebody like me, be so perfect in his craft to lose his hearing. And it was so overwhelming. He was depressed. He was suicidal.
Yeah, he writes a suicide note that we basically, that it survives. I mean, I feel like that note should be read in schools to kids. It's
pretty radical.
Yeah. I have a part of it in Discipline is Destiny. He says, for 6 years now, I've been hopelessly afflicted, made worse by the senseless doctors, for year to year deceived with hopes of improvement, finally compelled to face the prospect of a lasting malady whose cure will take years and perhaps be impossible. And it was impossible. He was deluding himself. He said, though born with a fiery, active temperament, even susceptible to the versions of society, I was soon compelled to withdraw myself to live alone. If at times I was soon compelled to forget all this, oh, how hardly I was flung back by the doubly sad experience of my bad hearing. Yet it was impossible for me to say to people, speak louder, shout, for I am deaf. And he basically was going to kill himself.
That's right. And he would pretend for a long time. And so he's a creative genius.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can get away with a lot when you've got that title, I guess.
Yeah, people just thought he was really focused.
Yeah, and he would call it something. And I love this.
His raptus or raptus?
Raptus.
Yeah. And
so he would go into his raptus. So people would say, Sir Beethoven, and his friends would be like, oh, he's in his raptus.
Yes.
And he's in his, even though we're walking along, the river. And it was a protection mechanism that he was socially deploying.
Yes.
And then when it became just too much, he couldn't hide it. That's when he went away. And that's where I'm pointing to, he made a decision. I need to do my music.
Yeah.
And it's been said, and I don't know if this is the case, but Beethoven, number 5, bum, 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 that it actually comes from him banging his fist on the piano, like, why can't I hear?
Yeah.
And so what is that? And so that was an insight, so that's, I'm going to make up some liberties and take some liberties in the story, that's where he was like, I need to do my music. I was making music for the world. I need to do my music.
Yeah.
And that's where number 5 and the rest were like some of the best he ever produced.
When I think about just sort of, we talk about fortitude, we talk about strength, just the sheer strength and character that it takes to get that low and to be that down and to have that taken from you. And he claws his way back. You know, he doesn't quit on himself. He doesn't quit on the art. And that's ironically, part of what keeps him going is he goes, I think I do still have more good work in me.
That's an optimist.
Yes.
So I haven't met a best in the world across multiple disciplines that's not fundamentally optimistic. They all are.
Yeah.
Like there's not a best in the world that sees the future being bleak.
Yeah.
Okay. Like pessimism is, I don't think this is going to work.
Yeah.
Optimism is, I think something good's going to take place.
Well, I've talked about this because the stereotype of the Stoics is like a little resigned, a little down. I mean, Marcus Aurelius, people say, oh, it's been depressing. It must not have smiled a lot. It must not have enjoyed. And I think about his life. I mean, this is a guy, he becomes emperor, and it's basically like 20 consecutive years of everything that could go wrong, going wrong. There's a plague, there's floods, there's wars. He buries 6 children. 6 of his kids die. So half of his children die before reaching adulthood. It's just like one after another. And he's betrayed. Some people think his wife cheats on him. It's a horrible life. Like, and he's sick. And also, it wouldn't have been fun to live in ancient Rome. Like, life would have been just hard day to day. Like, there would have been not enough heat. It would have been too hot, you know? And I'm like, how does he get up every morning? Like, how does he get out of bed? Like, again, the greatness of Michael Jordan in the flu game is one thing, but like the person who's depressed, who feels like their life is falling apart, who's lost something or someone, and they keep going, not just like for a day, but every day. To me, that's also greatness. And it's, as we started earlier, it's harder to celebrate than they scored the most points in the shortest amount of time, or, you know, they set the scoring record, or they ran the fastest time. But that's real greatness, that sort of day-to-day I kept going through.
It's just that we don't honor it because there's not a TV set on it. There's not a microphone in front of it. There's not a financial reward. We endlessly argue about who's the greatest of all time in whatever sport. Yeah. And we haven't started the conversation, who's the greatest mom?
Yeah, sure.
Who's the greatest dad? Mm-hmm. Which people herald in a naive kind of like throwaway, like it's the hardest job in the world. Yeah, no kidding. But we don't really reward it.
Yes.
Right. Like, and so I don't know. I'd love to know who the best mom or the best dad in the world is.
Well, we don't know what people are going through. So, you know,
we're all going through something.
And we're all going through something. Yeah. And so, you know, sometimes that is a tangible or a identifiable thing, like someone loses their hearing, or someone, you know, is, you know, loses someone they love in an accident. It's very clear, but just, you wake up and you feel shitty and you feel down and you don't believe in yourself. And to be able to find a way through that's a form of greatness.
Do you lean on anxiety or depression?
More anxiety.
More anxiety. Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. Do you know depression?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like full on depressive episode, or like having some sadness that.
Yeah. More like dysthymic, like just sort of a little bit, but not bit, like, yeah. But yeah, it's in. That's the problem with depression, right? Is that like what it actually feels like for the people who are depressed is ineffable. It's like we can't fully understand it, and that's why we're so sort of glib and
harden up, toughen up. Like, exactly. Come on,
it's the same with addiction.
Look, it's not that you can't talk your way out of it like that. You have to.
It seems like you should be able to, right? Because they've got all these opinions about it. And then you're like, well, let me show you why all those things are incorrect.
Yeah, you've got.
It doesn't make a difference.
You can try that. You've got running water, this, that, and the other. And that actually makes a depressed person feel worse, because
now they don't have a reason.
Yeah, they say, well, you're right. I should be happy, but I'm telling you something's not right. Yeah. And so the thing about feeling deep, even experiences of depression, it's actually really important. The thing about a depressive episode or a disorder of depression is that they're stuck in it. So that's one of the reasons that I think many of us are afraid to do that. To like, if you didn't experience nighttime, you wouldn't know how to experience daytime, right?
Sure.
Like, so the yin yang, the equal opposites, the valley and the mountains, whatever. So we need both to understand.
Yeah.
And it's The problem with the disorder is that they're stuck in it and they don't know how to climb back out or get out of it. But it's really important for us, if you really want joy, you've got to understand deep sadness. And it's like, in some respects, the grief that comes as the after effect of a death one, it can help you understand that just a little bit.
Sure.
As long as you don't kind of just do the Irish. I got Irish and Italian in me. So like, we'll just laugh, tell stories, drink, and, and cry at the same time. But like, understanding the depths of both anxiety and depression is a powerful tool if you want to really understand what you're capable of.
Yeah.
You do also, okay, get in your ice tub, fine.
Yeah.
Why not go to the depths of sadness? Oh, wait, that's too hard? You're going to macho up, and do the ice bath? Come on. I mean,
sure.
You're going to grind through that. It's crazy. It honestly, the biggest part, yes, there's physiological benefits of an ice bath, period.
Yeah.
That's good. You know what the opportunity in that I see as a psychologist is the walk to the ice bath is where you meet yourself. Once you get into the ice, you have another opportunity to meet yourself.
Yeah, you got 3 minutes, you're just sitting there. What do you do at that time?
The moment that you get in and you have the shock response, you meet yourself in that moment. Are you trying to escape?
Sure.
Or do you settle in and be in it?
Sure.
Yeah. So it's the walk to, it's the first few seconds. And then when you're actually in it, are you trying to leave or can you be with yourself in a hard and harsh environment? So there's as much a psychological play as there is physiological in that experience.
Well, I would argue that the physiological stuff is hopefully it's true, and
we're
seems
in a cycle.
like
We're in a cycle right now.
It seems like it'll be vetted, but we don't know, right? But even if it isn't true, it's still beneficial if you're using the walk there and the walk back, the 3 minutes, and you're wrestling with that part of you that says, I don't want to do that thing. It's hard.
That's right.
And you say, I'm going to do that thing because it's hard. And then you get in and it's hard and your mind wants to wander. You want to check the clock and to go, what I'm going to practice here is being in control of what I am thinking about.
Or aware.
Yes. Right. Yes. East, west, different. But there's different my word choice is probably operative. But the point is, hey, am I going to actually think about those thoughts and decide what they mean? Or am I going to be lost in what's happening, which is unpleasant and cold? Or am I going to be thinking about how this looks on social media or all this other shit?
And there's a danger in it when you're in a harsh, difficult, cold environment in this case. And I labeled it harsh, but a cold environment. Yeah. And your reflexive nature is to escape. And let's say you're doing that. I got to get out of here. What am I doing? This sucks. I got to get. And so now you're pairing, let's call it low-level thinking, escapism, desire for relief with hardness, difficult environments.
Yeah.
So now when you're pairing and training. When I'm in a difficult environment, I'm training myself to try to escape.
Yeah, that's just a shitty experience. They didn't learn anything.
It's actually really bad because the unlock happens when you settle in, you make a decision to be in it, and to have a love affair with the unfolding moment. So like we're still in the Stone Ages in so many ways. Go do the hard thing and suck it up. It's all of the little nuanced, delicate tenderness that happens with the awareness of what's actually happening.
Sure.
And pairing an aware mind, a guided mind in a hostile, rugged, difficult environment. That's the path of mastery.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be in an ice bath. You can also do it as you walk to get your hair cut, or what I mean. You can find that. You can practice that skill, that exercise, that sort of getting in touch with yourself or being present or whatever. You can do that anywhere and everywhere.
100%.
Yeah, this was amazing, man. Thanks.
I'm so stoked to hang with you.
Anytime.
It's really fun.
I loved the book. I'm glad you did it, and
thank you.
It's great.
I appreciate you.